Hello, this is the Wild Witches from the Wild Witchcraft channel, and we are here to talk about witchy myths and stereotypes. I am Random Heart.
Winter Rose.
Charlie the Free Dragon.
And we're going to be your hosts for today, so let's start this off. Winter?
Okay, so we're going to be talking about witchy myths and stereotypes of all kinds. I'm going to be kind of playing devil's advocate. I have some show and tell, which should be fun. And I know I said in the group and everything else that I was going to be absent for a while. Things have calmed down quicker than I thought they would, so this was kind of an impromptu kind of let's do a video. So we're going to see where it goes, and hopefully we'll all have fun.
Oh, we always do.
Of course. So, okay. I guess I'll start with something. All right. So one of the... Wait, I want to show you my little witch. This is how people see us. That's why I brought her. But anyway, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. One of them, I think, is that there is either black magic or white magic. And people either want you to curse and hex somebody or do a love spell or do a healing for somebody. And the truth is, as far as I'm concerned, the way that I work, magic is magic. Manipulating energy is manipulating energy. The point of witchcraft is you are manipulating energy to do your will, basically. You're manipulating energy in accordance with your will, with what you want to happen. To me, there is very little, there's really no difference to me. I call myself a rainbow witch as opposed to a gray witch, black witch, white witch. It's just energy. It's just magic. Whatever you're doing, you're manipulating energy. So you're changing the course of events in some kind of way.
And just a reminder, if anyone watching wants a more in-depth discussion of negative, positive, and neutral magic, we did a video on that last week.
And it was amazing. So. That was a really great one, and I kind of totally agree with that. Instead of keep saying black and white magic, negative, positive. The color thing, I get why it's easier to remember, but it's what it is. It's negative and it's positive.
I don't even go by that necessarily. To me, when you're manipulating energy, and it's going to change the course of events. It's going to change people's lives. It's going to have an impact on your life. It doesn't matter whether you're doing a healing on somebody or you're hexing somebody. You're manipulating the energy around them. And to me personally, there's no qualms about it. Can you hear that? That's my freaking neighbors pounding on the floor. I can't stand them, but anyway.
Sorry. No, I didn't hear it at all.
Okay, good. Good.
I first off, probably one of the biggest myths out there that is somehow still being perpetuated is that all witches worship Satan. And no, not all witches do. A majority of witches do not even believe in what the normal everyday person would call Satan. We don't. That's not what witchcraft is about. And people say, oh, well, you deal in demons, and, you try to steal people's souls, and I'm like, bitch, calm yourself down. Go have some tea and, calm, because you have no chill. That's right. Not what we're about. Calm down.
I just want to comment on that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to comment on that real quick. Like I said, I'm probably going to be a lot different from everybody else's point of view just because of the way I practice. But me personally, I do believe that Satan and demons exist in the same way that I do believe that the Abrahamic God exists, because these things are thought forms, and with all the energy and all of the basically all of the energy directed towards these ideas and these figures kind of makes them real, and they become the same way that Aphrodite or Odin is an energy. They are energies that exist because so much effort and energy has gone into years and years and years and centuries of directing energy towards this and kind of creating this energy. So to me, even though I don't necessarily work with the Abrahamic God, I won't say that he doesn't exist, because it's kind of saying, like, you know, Odin's energy doesn't exist, or anything else, because all of this energy has built them up, and it becomes a thought form, basically, and it comes into existence through that energy.
Do you view them more as like tulpas?
I'm sorry?
Do you view them more as like tulpas, like creatures that are created from... That's almost what you're talking about there, as a tulpa.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. I mean, and a lot of that comes from my chaos background, I guess, because you can basically work with anything. You can work with Darth Vader, okay?
What is it called? Pop gods? No. Pop culture witchcraft, right?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Pop culture witchcraft? That's what it's called.
Yeah, exactly. Because this idea from media or literature, or wherever you're pulling this character from, has these traits that have been kind of decided upon, and you can pull from that energy. And the same thing, I mean, you can create your own deity, but the only thing with that, I have kind of an issue with that, because, well, yes, you can do that, the same way that you can create a servitor or, you know, anything like that. It might not have as much power because these other forms have had so ingrained in us to be this certain energy, and so many people view these deities or figures or whatever as having this certain energy. So over time, it just becomes real, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. I mean, I get what you're trying to say, but I just wanted to talk about, like, and I am also doing the whole stereotyping when I say this in a generalization. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Even though I'm going to say a generalization, a lot of Christians, or even non-Christians, like just regular everyday people, will think if you do witchcraft, you're in a pact with the devil. I mean, I know that Freed Dragon, you're into supernatural, right?
Yeah, I love that TV show. It's one of my favorites.
And they say that any witch, no matter who you are, you get your power from demons and the devil. And it's just like...
And it's one thing I have a big issue with that show, is that they never present that most witches don't follow demons. We don't interact with demons.
Yeah.
A lot of us, and again, not all of us, don't even believe they exist. What I usually say to my Christian friends who say that kind of thing, when I said, you guys created your Christian demon, devil, you can keep him. I don't want him. He's not part of my practice. You know,
at the same time, all deity was created at some point.
Yeah.
You know, and personally, I have no issue working with demons or angels that have existed for centuries, for the same reason that I kind of said before. They have these personalities and these energies that you can call upon. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but...
And you know what? I think a lot of witches have the same kind of mentality that I do, when it's, you know, we have so many different paths that we take, because here's the deal, and I'll say this really clearly. You don't have to be Wicca to be a witch. There's so many paths of paganism, witchcraft. There's Abrahamic witches, which means there's Christian witches. There's agnostic witches, which means, you know, they don't really know. They're just, you know, they're just energy manipulators. There's so many types of witches. You don't have to label yourself into one certain faith.
Right.
I've lost my point of view. My thought form has run away with me. But what I was saying is, when we generalize one certain group, like, that's the one I hear the most, is that we make pacts with the devil, and even though there are some that actually work with what everybody would call Satan or the devil or Lucifer or the morning star or whatever, you know, there's a big group of us that actually don't even believe in that person or thought form or God or, you know, demon. And then there are some of us, which is like, here's the in between, right? Charlie the Freed Dragon, you said you don't believe in demons, right? And then
well, I don't believe that in them in the context that the Christians do. I do believe they exist, just not in the same context, and I kind of follow the belief that they're not evil or good, they're just more chaotic beings of lesser power. I'd context them closer to like a demigod kind of thing. I just don't believe they're like what the Christian Bible talks about them as fallen angels, whatever. I don't believe they're fallen, I just believe they're a different species. I view angels kind of the same way. They exist. Definitely don't believe they're all good. Yeah. I just kind of believe they exist as a balance to the chaos created by the demons, but I don't believe either of those are evil or good, or that they follow the Christian concept of where they came from. I kind of just view them as another species, minor deities kind of thing.
I absolutely agree with what you just said. That's pretty much how I view it as well.
And then you guys agree on that stance, and then now here I'll put my own personal opinion on this. I also don't believe that the, you know, the completely, like, there's no middle area of demons. I do believe there is a middle ground with demons or entities. I call them entities or beings. I don't really call them demons, but some of them I'm like, yeah, bitch, you a demon. And I don't want to play with you, like, at all. I personally do not have that in my craft. Like, I don't believe the Christian views of demons, but I do believe there are, like, negative entities out there because there's too much, like, actual evil in the world for there not to be. That's my view of it. Like, something's got to be, like, feeding it and feeding off of it for that stuff to be happening, in my point of view and my belief. But I don't view it like the Christians would view it. But, like, I don't mess with them in my craft. Like, I don't invite them. But I don't, like, turn away people that do, you know what I mean? Like, if you do that, that's wonderful. You do you, boo-boo. That's not my cup of tea, so stay in your own pond, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another stereotype I think that'd be interesting to talk about a little bit is the stereotype that all witches refuse to work with medicine. I've seen that a lot of places, especially online, where they're all like, oh no, if you're a witch, you only believe in herbal stuff and would never go to a hospital or a doctor.
I was
I've talked about this before. I think I talked about it in, I guess, one of our videos, a group video, I think. Something that I have come across because I have multiple health issues.
Same here.
Yeah, including mental health issues, schizoaffective. And so I went a long time without medication. And because I went on and off my medication because I was constantly being told, you're poisoning yourself, you're this, you're that, there's, you know, St. John's wort, this, that, the other thing. And finally I realized I need to be fucking medicated. Like, I can't function unless I'm medicated, and that's it. And but it took me a while, and there are people out there that are like that. Like, because you're a witch, and you work with nature, you have to only use natural remedies, which I
Natural.
do.
Just putting quotes on that, natural, because
Right.
a lot of medicine is completely natural.
Exactly. Um, but the thing is that those things are great, and I use those things, but in conjunction with my medication.
Exactly.
So,
And I view it the same way. Like, I've had people, I do a lot of herbal remedy stuff. It's actually something I do a lot of, and I have a lot of memorized and a lot of knowledge in that stuff. But if someone comes to me with a broken leg, I'm not going to say, hey, put this poultice on it. I'm going to say, go to the hospital. Like,
yes, exactly.
and there's people who've actually come to me and asked me to, like, help them with these medical things. I'm like, you need to go to a hospital. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to do anything here.
Oh my god, that so reminds me of that movie Grown Ups. Have you seen that?
No.
She's like, we're just gonna put this maze poultice on it, and he's like, bitch, I need a doctor. Oh
Yeah,
shit.
it's the same thing. I've had people who think that just because I'm a witch that I believe medicine is evil. I had people come after me saying I was an anti-vaxxer. I'm actually personally extremely pro-vaccine. Like,
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I don't get when people aren't. Like, I'm not going to judge people who don't, but please vaccinate your children. I'm begging everyone online right now, please
You're
vaccinate
endangering
your
every
children.
other child in the world when you don't vaccinate your child. Because guess what? Everybody goes backward.
because you're putting other children at risk. And
Thank
other
you.
children can die because
Thank you.
your
Standing ovation. Standing ovation.
position.
Fucking
Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. I've had people who say that kind of thing to me, and I just get so frustrated by it because, I have one of my friends who cannot have vaccines. He's allergic to them. If he gets them, hey, have fun in the hospital, bud.
Right.
So, like, people like him, when other people don't vaccinate, they're actually endangering him. So it's just, if your child is not allergic to vaccines, vaccinate. It's not that complex.
When people are like, those vaccination shots, they're just trying to give you autism, or if they're the man trying to put like trackers in your children.
Autistic.
And I'm like,
Hi, I'm
oh my
autistic.
God.
There's nothing wrong with me.
Seriously.
What the fuck? Stop with the conspiracy theories, my friends. Chill. Chill.
Because we're
Vaccinate your
bringing
kids.
back all these diseases that were eradicated, but all of a sudden we have them again.
Yeah,
It's
because of
because
this shit.
people are jumping on this bandwagon without having any factual knowledge of the reality of what the vaccines do and don't do. I mean, I don't know.
Speaking on a more funny note about that, entertaining note about that, do you guys ever watch, have you ever seen If Google Was a Guy?
No.
It's a YouTube series. You should look it up, but it's hilarious.
I love stuff like that.
But one of the funny parts is a woman comes in, she says, vaccines cause autism, and the Google guy says, I have like so many thousands of results saying they don't. I have one result saying they do. And she grabs one result and goes, I knew it! And it's like, yeah, that's what you guys sound like. That's exactly what you sound like. But that is a common misconception I've seen a lot about Wiccans, is that we're all anti-medicine, anti-vax, and
okay,
I've met a few who are, but most of them have more common sense than that.
When we were talking about herbalist medicine, I will be devil's advocate. Hold on one second.
Yay for devil's advocate.
I have tinctures, and I use them for things. I use them for headaches. I use them, like, I've made these. So I know what y'all are talking about, but guess what? I also grab an ibuprofen when I need it, and I also grab my menstrual meds when I need it. And guess what? I have ADD, and I take a pill every fucking day.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what I was talking about. I think there's a balance, but I think the stereotype I see is always that taken to the extreme, that we don't know how to balance the two. And I think herbal remedies are extremely helpful. Like I said, I'm the one people always come to about them. I know a lot about them. I research. I know a ton about herbal remedies. But at the same time, I also know there are a lot of times someone just needs to go to the ER. And I think that's where the misconception comes in, that people assume that just because we work with herbal remedies that we don't know how to do anything else. Or we don't understand the concept that you need to go to the hospital sometimes or to the doctor, and that you can't rely on herbal remedies to fix everything. Yes, they are great. I think they're a great alternative a lot of the time. Keyword, a lot of the time. to antibiotics. I think, personally, I think antibiotics are way overprescribed.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania, where I live, we just recently had an issue with a woman actually who's immune. They ended up only being able to find one antibiotic that finally cured her, because superbug, yay! So I think antibiotics and things like that are way overprescribed. I think there are a lot of times when people are fine without them. Personally, I used to be on antidepressants, but I don't need them anymore because of all my that worked for me. Again, that worked for me, not everyone else, and a lot of people. I mean, you said yourself, Winter, that you use them, you use medication along with herbal remedies, and I think most people fall into that category.
Right.
I just think that's a stereotype.
It's a dangerous stereotype, it really is, especially, like when I was younger, I would stop my medication because of it, and it's a dangerous stereotype for people coming into this practice and learning herbalism, and other people telling them that medication is poisoning their body and they need to rely on herbal remedies. That's a dangerous thing for a lot of people.
Well,
agreed.
I don't think that I mean, I agree that that's dangerous, but I don't think that was somebody stereotyping you. I think that was what we call the extremist of our witchiness, like our witch population. Those are the extremist herbalists, and they pressure a lot of people to get off of medication when actually they really need their medication. So I don't agree when people are like, stop taking your medication, you're poisoning your body. No, I'm staying healthy the way I need to.
Mm-hmm. And can I bring this into another topic that's
Yes.
kind of related, especially for me, and something else that kind of pushed me away from what I became, what I always was. The idea that, and I've read this in multiple books, that if you have a mental illness, you should not practice witchcraft. That it's dangerous for you. That
What?
yeah. And I've actually had therapists tell me this. Like, there's nothing wrong with your faith or your practice, but you have to be careful of magical thinking, of thinking that you're manipulating energy or doing things like this. And I have a few books, especially shadow work books, that will warn you in the beginning, if you suffer from a mental illness, this book is not for you.
I've seen that a lot too, unfortunately.
You know what? I think that's such bullshit. That's such bullshit. I can't even right now. Like, seriously, y'all. Like, wow, that blows my mind.
And the thing is, if you go back, or even currently, especially in Native American traditions, those who are afflicted with mental illness are often seen as shamans. They have a broader and different perspective on things and are able to kind of see things that other people can't. And I've kind of learned to accept and appreciate even the benefits and the different perspectives that my messed up brain allows me to have. That's just how I feel. I don't know.
Okay. So, my opinion on stereotyping is that, I don't know if you guys talk to a lot of muggles, but I've heard a lot of people say that 95% of witches have mental illness, and that's why they're witches. And I'm like,
I think they're looking at a cause and effect here when there isn't a cause and effect. I think what's really happening is that, and I do think that actually might have some truth to it, that there are a lot of pagans and Wiccans do have some form of mental illness, but I think a lot of that is because conventional religions drive us away. I mean, Christianity, a lot of those are, not to say you can't be part of those, but I think a lot of those religions tend to drive us away. They push us, they tell us we're wrong, that we need fixing, they don't accept us as is, and I think what ends up happening is that, at least especially this is my story, I left the church because of that. I couldn't stand it. I was told I was wrong, I was going to hell, a lot of things, and I just didn't, I was uncomfortable with that. You. And I think they're looking at a cause and effect in the wrong direction here. I think what happens is conventional religions drive us away. We go looking for other religions that we're more comfortable in, and a lot of us find paganism. And I think that's kind of what's happening here.
Can I add on to that? Okay, so you guys have noticed, if you've been actually checking out the awareness factor towards mental illness has exploded. It's grown so fast within the last 50 years that I'm sorry, but almost, oh gosh, I'm gonna misquote it, and somebody's gonna be like, you don't know your shit. Like over 50% of just American people, I'm not even talking the world, I'm talking American people, have a mental illness. That's one out of
I'll
every
look it
two
up for you.
people.
Give me a second.
Look it up for me. Let's look.
Well,
But it's not the fact that all witches have a mental illness. It's the fact that we as a human being race, not a human being race, but we as humankind have become aware of the truth of mental illnesses and the broad scope of them. There's so many more, and we realize that we have them. So I think that just cuts at the knees.
Right. I think the
so I just looked up the statistics.
Yes.
1 in 4, so approximately 61.5 million Americans older than 18 have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. While about 1 in 17, that's 13.6 million Americans, live with what they term as a serious mental health illness, which includes schizophrenia, major depression, and bipolar. Approximately 20% of youths aged 13 to 18 experience severe mental health disorders in a given year. For ages 8 to 15, the estimate is 13%.
Okay, so maybe not as big as 50%, but it's a lot more than what we used to think. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I misquoted it, but we're aware. We're more aware, is what I'm saying.
The thing is, too, I just want to point this out. If you look at, and I haven't read the whole DSM-5, which is the book that lists all the mental illnesses and the criteria that those psychologists use. But basically, if you go through that book, every single person can fit a diagnosis. There's a diagnosis for fucking everything, and I don't know.
Yeah, because we're just talking about clinically diagnosed here people. We're not talking about people who self-diagnose, which is valid. I will say that 100%. Self-diagnosis is a valid form of diagnosis. Some people can't afford to go to a doctor to get clinically diagnosed. Sometimes doctors are extremely unhelpful. So self-diagnosis happens a lot. Some people go through it and they just don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have people who things like PTSD from assault, things like that, who might not be diagnosed just because they don't think their issues are quote-unquote bad enough. So they just internally suffer with them. I mean, there's 1,000 scenarios, and probably most people do have something. But I like to say, don't ever judge someone looking at them because you don't know what they have underneath that.
And I will say this, there are a lot of doctors, okay, in the medical field who, okay, when you come to them with something like ADD, which I have to say, so many people invalidate people with ADD, especially young, like, kids or teens. They're like, you don't have ADD, you're just hyper. Yeah. No, it's an actual chemical thing in your brain where you're ADD. It's an illness. Like, you live with it every single day. And there's so many doctors that are like, well, we want to try to do all of this instead of actually helping you. You know what I mean? And it's so hard to get yourself on a medicated regimen that actually helps you function as a person that can actually think in a straight line instead of, I can't remember the start of my sentence, so I can't finish my thought form. Right. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many people that invalidate it, even in the medical field, and there's a lot of illnesses like that in mental illness. Yeah. So we're still at the infancy of taking care of people with mental illnesses. So I know we went on a tangent here, but I don't care. I don't fucking care.
Yeah, one of the things I'd like to mention about the mental illness thing that drives me crazy is when people talk about all the time about people with mental illness need to be locked up or they need to be fixed. Especially, I see this a lot on it, and I'm not mentally ill with this, but autism, where people say just because you're autistic makes you unintelligent. There's so many things they list to me, and I'm like, no, I'm a pretty normal human being. It's just some days sounds, sights, smells can be overwhelming, and I have sensory overload. And that's where my diagnosis of autism comes from. But it doesn't make me not intelligent. I actually score pretty high on the IQ scale for what that's worth. Another stereotype I think we could talk about is that you must be born into a family of witches to become one.
Adopted.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. I'm adopted. I have no idea who. I know the name of my mother, but that's about the farthest I've gotten. I'll never know the name of my father, bio dad or biological dad, because it wasn't written on my birth ticket. And I have a. I mean, that's another thing where I think I talked about this on another video where it's really hard for me to even tap into ancestral magic for myself. But my sister also adopted, well, not also adopted, but I adopted her into my family. She has a lot of ancestors, and for some reason I can tap the hell out of hers, be like talking to them on Samhain and everything, but I can't find mine because I don't feel that link. And I've been a witch since I've officially been a witch since I was 15, and 20. I'll be 28 this year. So you don't have to be. Now that's another thing. You don't have to be born into a family of witches. You don't have to be, what is it called, initiated by another witch into a coven. Otherwise, you're not really a witch.
Yeah.
I see that all the time as a solo practitioner too, that just because I haven't been initiated means I'm not a witch. No, I'm a witch. And again, I'm also adopted, so I get the whole thing. I'm actually, though I do know both my bio parents, both my birth parents I've had, my birth mother I've had the privilege of knowing since I was a kid, and my birth father I've actually got in touch with this past year, so it's been interesting. But neither of them are Wiccans, and as far as I know, I don't have any family, but I'm still very much a Wiccan, and so no blood as far as I know. And again, I don't have, I was never initiated. I'm a solo practitioner, so.
I just want to say, let me touch on the ancestor thing. I'm half adopted. I don't know my biological father. My dad adopted me when I was very young. So I don't know his history. I don't know anything about him. But what I will say as far as ancestors, I believe that we have there's different kinds of ancestors, in other words. I work a lot with my ancestors. I work a lot with spirits and the dead. And if you look at my ancestor altar, most of the people on there are not blood relation. A lot of the people on there are people that were very close to me, people that helped raise me, people who were kind of adopted family to me. Not necessarily in the sense of, I was signed over to them, but adopted family in that I grew up with them, or even my mother-in-law who passed, who kind of accepted me into the family, that kind of thing. So to me, there is your blood relative ancestors. But there might be people that you don't want to connect with, even though they are blood relatives. If your grandmother was a born-again Christian, and I'm speaking from experience, I'm not going to call on her to help me with a working, because that's not something that she did. And that's another thing I want to say. I'm going off on a little tangent here, but bear with me. Just because somebody has crossed over does not mean that they are suddenly all loving and all accepting and, this wonderful spiritual being. For the most part, I believe if you were an asshole in the physical, you're an asshole in spirit. You don't get this automatic, pass and this, whatever. So for me, I'm looking at my ancestral altar. I'm sorry. I have my blood ancestors who I work with, and I don't know all of them, obviously, but it's my lineage, and I work with that. I have my adopted side, and I work with those ancestors as well as I will call them your witchy ancestors, which is all the witches and the magical practitioners who came before you, who suffered persecution, who died for the cause and who are still dying for the cause. Like in Africa, there's still people being killed for practicing witchcraft. So for me, the ancestral line of witches, because I do believe that we are born this way. I believe that anybody can practice magic, but not everybody is a witch. Like everybody has the ability to manipulate energy, but your witchy lineage of those who have come before you, to me, those are ancestors that you can work with as well. And they might even be more helpful in your workings and things like that because they have, you know, a lot of them have died in the name of their beliefs. So people who are adopted, and my husband's fully adopted, and I've explained to him, you know, he works with his mother who had passed on, and you know, even though it wasn't blood, but you're kind of in an advantage in that you have two sets of ancestors that you can work with, because even though you're adopted, that's very close to you in your energy, and then you have your bloodline, whether you know them or not, that you can try to communicate with and try to get to know. And then you have your witch line of ancestors. So that's just my opinion on that.
We also need to remember that some of us have, if we know our past lives, also can call on our past lives, and those related to those. That's actually what I call on more because my adoptive family is uber Christian, so yeah, calling on them would be a great idea. So yeah. Extremely sarcasm there. So I actually tend to call on my relations to my past lives is what I prefer to use, given those are the only ones I have that aren't associated with people who would be upset with me calling on them. Mm-hmm. And so I don't tend to call on those people at all.
True. I'd like to bring up, gosh, this kind of offends me every time I hear it. The people who think that we can turn people into frogs, or as I call them, the douchebags. Be like, they come up to you and be like, "Oh, you're a witch? You're gonna turn me into a frog?" Be like, "No, I could turn you into a douchebag, but you already are." So
you know what's funny? Yeah. I just got a toad, and my husband was like, "Yeah, when somebody asks you about your ex, you could just point to the tank and be like, yeah, he's in there."
That's a great idea. I might have to do that just to make a point.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Another thing that drives me nuts is people who assume, and by the way, just to say to anyone listening, there is no problem if you like sex and like a lot of sex and like orgies, whatever. That's up to you. But not all witches do that. A lot of us don't. Most of us don't. Some of us do. And also, word of caution to anyone getting into covens, if a coven requires you to do a sex act, do not join them. That is not okay. Any coven people listening who want to do that, don't. Stop it now. That's extremely inappropriate. Not okay.
It's all about consent. No. It's about consent. If that's what you're looking for, let's just be honest. Everybody's got a little freakiness into them. But if that's what you're looking for, just be safe, honey. Just be safe.
Exactly.
But if you're a beginner,
when people are getting
the beginners are like,
and they,
oh yeah, you have to do
that
this.
happened to me a lot. That's actually why I stopped looking for covens. Most of the ones in my area are run by 20-somethings who are just trying to get a lot of sex, and I was really not okay with that. When I get a message saying, "Are you okay if we do a big orgy for you to join?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm not interested anymore."
Have you heard of the hand fasting? Like there was oh my gosh. When I heard this, I was like, "Are you effing kidding me?" Like there's this tradition that says if you want to be hand fasted by a priest and priestess of like a coven, you have to do it in the nude, and they have to kiss you in the 5 points of the pentacle. And I'm like, bitch.
That is not part of hand fasting. That is not part of hand fasting.
No, I don't.
You hear that online, people. If you hear this online, this is not part of a real hand fasting. Stop now and preferably run.
Oh, but I will say that when I was looking into, when I was doing in the beginning, sorry, that was my kids. When I was like in the beginning looking up history and stuff, what I did see was, guys, calm down. What I did see was there was this ritual that they used to do for planting the seeds in the fields. And in some instances, some of the priests and priestesses, or high priest and high priestess, would go and they would make love in the fields to bless them for fertilization. Now, we as witches understand the whole cycle of birth and death and rebirth of the wheel of the year, and that did have some valid, like that stuff actually happened. Like when they would want to bless a field or a crop, they would go and do that. But I don't believe if you want to get initiated into a coven, you have to give up your consent and have sexual relations with these people that you don't know who they are, truly. You meet once a month, twice a month, and they want you to
some of the groups
open
even
yourself
required you
sexually to
didn't
them.
use protection. Some of the groups I saw were even like trying to encourage their groups not to use protection, and I'm like,
And that just
no!
It's unsafe. It's so unsafe. It's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And what I will say is that if you're open to that, if that's something you're okay with, and you live that kind of lifestyle, number one, there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle as long as you do it safely. Okay? It's all about consent and trust and honesty. But here's the thing, okay? When you're a beginner and you're looking, or even if you've been a solitary practitioner for a while and you're looking for a group, a coven, a circle, whatever, if that circle's like initiation is something of a sexual practice, personally, I think it's wrong. I think it's downright wrong to say you have to give your body to the whole group, or even to the high priest or high priestess. That sounds a lot like those cults. You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
and
Those
I have
cults.
some severe issues with that. Especially, I went through some pretty bad trauma a while ago, so trying to ask me to do that was just not okay.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think so. You sound shady as fuck.
Exactly.
It's about, like you said, it's about consent.
Exactly.
If you were into it, go for it. It's all good, whatever. But if you have somebody pressuring you to do it, or if it's a requirement to be in their group, fuck that. Get the fuck out.
Fuck it.
It's
Fuck
bullshit.
Yeah, that's my main issue.
I mean,
is
don't
that
fuck
require it. It's one thing if it's an option in the group, that's whatever, people want to do it, fine. But when you require that to even, actually, by the way, a few of these were to even attend one of their groups, that's, no, that's not okay. Those are the places I'm pretty sure some people need to be reporting, because that's just not okay. I mean, what are you going to do? Get there, decide you're uncomfortable, and then you don't have a choice? I mean, like, that's where it becomes an thing to me. Also, another point I'm going to bring up real quick is the fact that male witches are not warlocks. Please do not call anyone who's a male witch a warlock. Most of us consider that derogatory terms.
Can I speak on that?
It's a witch, it's a witch.
I'm just going to speak on that. I'm a huge fan of Christian Day, and if anybody, I know a lot of people aren't, but whatever, his reputation precedes him. But anyway, if you actually listen to him, he's very intelligent, and it goes beyond his kind of flamboyant appearance. He has reclaimed the word warlock, and if you look at history, the word warlock means oath breaker, but it means that from the Christian tradition. Christians are the ones that coined the term warlock as meaning oath breaker. So
I guess my point would more be ask a male witch if they're okay with that before you just assume.
Yeah.
Because I don't like that term with used with me, and so people have used that on me when I'm not okay with it. So I guess my main point, especially with that, call a male witch a witch unless they tell you otherwise.
Right.
Just because for most witches, and yes, there's exceptions like that, but most of us are not okay with that term, so just if you're curious, ask someone, but don't just use that term unless they tell you it's okay, instruct you to do so, or, obviously you asked and they've said it's okay. Otherwise, just say witch.
No, I completely agree with that. I know that that's a big thing. Oh, that means oath breaker. That's a bad word. It's really not, unless you're coming at it from a Christian's perspective, because that is where that definition came from.
And I'd like to bring up another stereotype that actually is one of my pet peeves, is the fact that they think all witches slaughter animals.
And along in with that we promote abortion to the point where we view it as a sacrifice, and sacrificing humans.
God.
Those are all things.
Yeah, sacrificing babies, and oh my God, that's so. I just want to punch people in the face when they're like, I've heard so many, like, I'm gonna say the word sermons about how, those devil worshippers are slaughtering, your pets in the backyard, and we have to stop them, and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be real honest. Almost all witches are so protective of animals because they're a piece of nature. They're a part of nature, and we are a faith of nature. We're a practice of nature. We're all about nature, and we want to protect it. So why the fuck would we be slaughtering animals? Now, I'm going to say this to those of you who practice Santeria. You do you, boo-boo, and there's nothing wrong with it, because guess what? That's your right to practice your religion. And you know what? I've also seen some people that will just be like taking meat from the freezer and be like, this is my sacrifice for today, and they'll just cook it up, and then they'll just give it to the goddess or the god or whoever they're dealing with. You don't have to, like, harm a living being to give sacrifices. Like, I myself feed some of my spell work with plants, flowers, water, like things of the earth.
Right.
Okay?
And for me, like, I still eat meat, but what I try to do for meat is, because I believe that with nature, what we take, we should also give back. The only kind of meat I prefer to eat, if at all possible, is meat that's actually hunted by, my fiance does the hunting, and we leave some of it actually as an offering back, some of the parts we can't consume, and you always leave it in nature so nature can have what's its own, and we never take more than we're going to use.
Right.
So you can both be a witch and eat meat. At the same time, we do try our best to, and I understand some people don't have a lot of money, so they can't afford to be vegetarian or vegan. Health issues can also affect that.
Yep.
So there's a lot of consideration there, but yeah, we don't promote that, or,
No, we're not out slaughtering your pets, people. We're not out stealing your pets out of your backyard and slaughtering them. Get over yourself. Get over your fears. That's not us.
Although there are evil people who do that, I will say that. There are very horrible people who do it.
There's evil people that have nothing to do with witchcraft, and they go around murdering pets because they're fucking psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. The other thing about the whole abortion thing, again, many of us are pro-choice, but at the same time, we're not promoting it in the sense of everyone should have an abortion, they are sacrifices to Satan. Like, no, it doesn't work that way.
No.
We promote choice, not kill all the... I don't even know where to go with that, but it just drives me crazy.
You should put that in the bullshit file. Bullshit file.
I just want to touch on a couple things in that topic. First of all, I don't slaughter animals, but I do use animal parts from animals that have passed away naturally or are already gone. I don't see anything wrong with it. It actually lends a lot. It's not just for shock value. It actually lends a lot of power to your practice. So I will say that. The second thing I want to say in regards to sacrifice is a sacrifice is... Somebody's dropping something in my house. I think it's my husband. Well, he's the only one here, so I hope it's my husband. But anyway, what was I saying? A sacrifice is something that is actually a sacrifice. If you're not going to use that piece of meat anyway, if you do not need that flower or plant anyway, it's not so much a sacrifice in my view. A sacrifice is more of something, if you're growing your hair out, you cut your hair and you offer that. That's a sacrifice. If you're growing your nails out and you pride yourself on that and you cut them off, that's a sacrifice. To me, a sacrifice means you're actually sacrificing something, which causes you to go without or something like that, because that's what a sacrifice really is. So that's just my opinion. Not to say that you can't feed a spell or
give offerings.
Yes, that's the
offerings and sacrifices are like two different venues of kind of the same parallel. Yes, you know what I mean? Like you do it for the same reason, but it's a totally different way of doing it. So I agree.
Right, not to say that you can't give meat or flowers or honey or whatever to your deities or to feed your spell. I mean, that's, I do that. But to me, that's different from an actual sacrifice. An offering is different. So.
Oh, I'd like to bring this up, because since we're on this topic. Blood magic. Everybody thinks that blood magic is evil and, oh, it's part of the devil and blah, blah, blah. A lot of witches use blood magic to feed or connect with a certain working or spell or witchcraft of a certain nature. You can use your own blood. You can use the blood from the steak that you're going to have that night. Like, you could literally use it for anything. Right. But, I mean, I will also say that I personally don't use my own blood because I'm very careful with connecting spells to my physical body, because I have, like, this phobia of getting sick. Because I've done it, like, I've done spells where I've connected it to my actual body, and, like, a week later I'm, like, sick as a dog because I've zapped so much energy out of myself because it kept feeding off me, and I had to cut the tie to that spell.
Right.
So I will say that there is a danger in that aspect of, if you're going to connect your physical body to a spell, realize that that spell is feeding off of your physical energy, not just your energy. Right. You get what I'm saying?
And I'd also like to make the point that any newer witches who are watching this, do not give your blood to someone unless, like, don't give your blood to someone generally, ever. I mean, I know there's going to be exceptions to that, but seriously, think about it as life and death. If you give that person your blood, you are trusting them with your literal life. I know of, like, one person I would ever give my blood to, and it's my fiancé, because I trust him with my life. That kind of commitment. You better trust that person permanently, not even just, oh, I'm in love with this new crush and I'm going to give him No.
No.
You better trust that person with your life, that if you were dying and they would choose you over themselves, because that's the kind of power you're giving that person.
Yeah.
And I am very, very protective of my hair and my hairbrush, any kind of blood,
nail clippings
from my nose, like
there's. I will say this, okay? The Romani style of witchcraft, which a lot of people say gypsy magic.
Don't use gypsy. That's a derogatory term, people.
I understand, honey. I understand. But I'm trying to let them understand what it is.
You used it correctly. I know. I just mean people in general. It's a general reminder.
Yes. That is what a lot of people would call a derogatory word if you are Romani or you are in the Romani tradition. But if you, a lot of the Romani traditions, okay, they used it for a reason. They had to protect themselves because they are a nomadic people, just like the Native Americans used it for a nomadic reason because they were getting attacked. So a lot of the reason why people think that Romanis are evil practitioners is because they protected themselves through hexes and curses and protection magic, and they would take people's hair, all kinds of stuff, like a snippet of their clothes, anything that they could anchor or tie to that person to use against them. Some practitioners would do that. And I'm not saying that only Romani witches do that, because let's be honest, There's a lot of people that use malediction and or negative hexing, cursing kind of stuff. And you know what? That's their choice. They have every right to do that. Personally, I'm very, very against it for myself because of a story in the last video. We were talking about negative and positive magic and curses and hexes. And I just want to say this, not every witch will curse. Not every witch will hex. Just because you're a witch doesn't mean I'm going to curse you, I'm going to hex you, I'm going to ruin your life, and I'm going to steal your soul. That's not all of us, but you have to understand some of us choose that tradition, that path, because we feel it is necessary.
Right. And some witches, again, who would never ever usually do that, can be pushed to that point.
Yes.
You know, again, you attack someone's kids or someone's spouse, they may be pushed to that point where they'll come after you. But for most witches, that's not a first choice. That's a last resort. I don't feel like I'm an option to protect someone I love, especially in examples of children and stuff. People will protect their kids, and you will go after someone's kids, especially as a Wiccan. They're probably going to come after you with magic, because that's the arsenal we have at our disposal.
Well, so, as a witch myself, if you come after my kids, I'm going to bring what you think hell is to your front door, and you're going to have to deal with it. Like, I know myself the backlashes of cursing and hexing, because I've seen a family member do it, and their life was ruined afterwards. Like, seriously, it ruined their life. They cursed themselves by cursing another. But once somebody hurts my child, I don't care about myself. I'll bring hell to you.
And I'll just say this, when you do, because I have no qualms about cursing and hexing, no, it's not my first line of defense, and I'm not just going to go ahead and do it because you freaking cut me off in traffic. But when you're performing something like that, you have to also have a protection in place at the same time. When you're doing that working, you also have to have a protective working going on simultaneously. And you also have to take into account your beliefs. If you believe that if you curse or hex or perform any kind of malediction, that it's going to come back to you and it's going to affect your life, then that's what's going to happen, because your own brain, your own psychological state is going to create that for you. So I would say definitely, you need to have your protections in place when you're doing that, just because you are working with that energy and you don't want that to connect or come back to you. And you also have to make sure that if you believe in the threefold law or the sevenfold law or the Western concept of karma, if you believe these things, then you're going to manifest that in your life.
And a lot of people misinterpret karma, because I know that I don't know the full book term of karma, but I know that it's not what a lot of people think it is. No. But we label a lot of things as karma, and a lot of people put the stereotype, if you're a witch, you have to believe in karma. No, you really don't. I've seen a lot of witches say, I don't believe in karma because, bitch, I am the karma. I'll bring it to you. Yes. Personally, I believe in a form of what people would call karma, as in, if you do bad things, it's going to come back at you. I do believe that very, very much, because I've actually seen it so many times in my life. I've seen it for me. I've seen it for others. I've seen it in people that have wronged me. And I thought seriously, very, very seriously about cursing or hexing them. And I was like, no, they're going to get theirs. Because I personally believe in a form of karma.
Right. And that goes back to your own beliefs. And that's why I say the Western concept of karma, because it's completely different from what karma actually traditionally is. Well, I won't go into that, but it's a different thing than what traditional karma is. And if I can just go back just a little bit and touch upon when we were talking about blood magic and things like that, traditional old-style witchcraft, creating witch bottles, creating protection bottles, anything like that, bodily fluid and body parts were a big part of that. Blood, urine, all those things were used. And I think a lot of us still use those kinds of things, but because there's such a stereotype against it and that people want to be like, ew, blah, 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 it's not talked about really. So that's just another thing I wanted to bring out there.
And I'm someone who's actually I've used blood magic. I actually think I mentioned this in the other video we did last week, that I used blood magic to save one of my rabbits, because my rabbits, I had a few pets and they were cursed and they were all dying just one after the other. I mean, really weirdly, and it wasn't like there was an illness we could catch or anything that we could save them from. So I did a blood magic spell to protect my one rabbit. So yes, and I very much did drain my personal life force. I ended up having to do a few other spells to sustain me, to keep the spell going. It was a lot of work and kind of terrifying. But it kept the rabbit alive for another 2 years, so I was pretty happy about that one.
Yeah.
So it did work.
Well, like you said, you did blood magic, and it was for a good thing, for a good cause, for, you know, it wasn't to, like, hurt somebody else. Like, that's what people think when they think you're doing blood magic. Oh, you must be doing a malediction spell. You must be doing an evil spell. That's not the case.
Right.
Yeah, it was a protective spell to try to protect my rabbit. The other thing I'd like to bring up is I have done sex magic, and some people do it, some people don't. There's nothing wrong with it inherently. It's just, again, if you're pressured into it. So that's one of the things. And as somebody who believes in the threefold law, I wanted to bring up the point we talked about in the other video, that threefold doesn't mean 1, 2, 3. It doesn't mean 3 times. It means, how many pieces is that? Mm-hmm. That's a lot. I mean, each of those sides.
Yes.
That's threefold. So just wanted to make that point that a lot of people believe in threefold. It's not 3 times, it's that. Mm-hmm. And that's a stack. And have fun with that.
Yes.
So it's really about, for those of us who believe it, it's really deciding whether it's worth it or not automatically doing it.
And for your topic of sex magic or you know, ecstasy magic, whatever you want to call it, fertility magic, I've done it myself. I just recently was able to do it because I have a partner who is starting his journey on magic and spirituality. Hold on one second.
Yeah, kids.
Sorry, I've got my kids, so I've got to quiet them down just a tad. But I've got, I mean, because he's just starting his spiritual journey, and we were able to do something very nice on Beltane, and it was like the first time I'd ever done anything on Beltane, and we just had like our little ritual bath, and it was really nice. It wasn't what a lot of people think sex magic is.
Right.
It's not about, you know, filthy, you know, it's not about that, sweetheart. It's, you know, it's about connecting energies and raising energies, and through passion, through, you know, ecstasy and that kind of thing. There are what some would call like orgy magic and stuff like that. There is that kind of thing, but there's also a sweeter side to sex magic, and I was able to tap into that with my lover, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was healing. It was healing. So
I'm really happy for you got to do that.
It was amazing, and that's what I don't like when people think, oh, you're gonna do sex magic. Ooh, you nasty. Be like, you know what? Until you experience it, you're not gonna understand.
Right. And as far as sex magic goes, that's a wonderful way to release or put a sigil out. If you're working in sigil magic, it's a wonderful opportunity to put that out there. Especially if your partner is willing and you're both concentrating on the same thing, and at the point of climax, pushing that energy out is very, very powerful. I just wanted to bring up another stereotype, familiars. Let's talk about familiars for a minute.
Oh, God.
So I actually have familiars, personally. I've had 3. And so I'll start this one off because this means a lot to me. Familiars are not, like, I see people tell me, oh, familiars are these invisible little animals that you can send off to do your bidding. No, mine were 3 physical cats who loved me. The one lets me hold him like a baby doll. I'm not even kidding. It's actually prefers to be held. I mean, he'll, like, cuddle up in my arms. They're physical beings. I have a very strong connection to them. And those are my familiars. And other people practice familiars different ways, but mine are literal physical animals. I had Steinbeck, Emma, and Marlowe. Marlowe's still living. The other 2 have passed. For me, each of them would come into my life right as the next one was leaving. So the sad part was when Marlowe came into my life, I knew I probably didn't have too much longer with Emma. But each of them seems to wander in my life when the next one leaves. And just a lot of that is, that's how my familiars work. They find me, and I've never actually bought any of them or anything. They've literally just wandered into my lives in different ways.
Right.
And they're my familiars. And they're just a very close emotional bond, and I'm able to practice magic using them. Like, they'll come into my circle and stuff. But
and you know what? You know what I hate? I hate. Okay, here's the thing. Guess what? Witches can stereotype too. Witches can stereotype other witches. When people say, your pet cannot be your familiar, we're not Sabrina the Teenage Witch people, I just want to be like, oh my god, you're not the all-knowing one. Okay? Yes, I believe in the fact that you can have a physical familiar, and guess what? I believe you can have a free-form familiar, one of a spirit type, one of an elemental type. My first familiar was actually an angel. That was my first familiar. And the fact that somebody would be like, you can't have an angel as a familiar, that's what he was. I can't give it to you any clearer than that. He was my familiar. He might not have been an animal.
Familiar comes to them in their own way, and like I said, mine just tend to be physical beings, and for some reason they've tended to all be cats. Like I said, I've had 3 of them. But each person is going to be different. Some people's is going to be corporal, and some people's going to be incorporeal, and some people are going to be able to work magic with the familiars, and other people won't. I knew a girl who had familiars who were physical pets, but she would never work magic with them. It depends.
I've had a familiar that was a tree. I've had a familiar that was a tree on my property that I lived, and it's still there, and I still go, when I'm able to go back to my old home, I still go and visit that familiar because I worked through that familiar, even though it was a tree. Like, a familiar can be anything. Do you get me? And you can create your own familiar. I don't know if anybody talks about this, but you can actually create your own familiar. There is a whole book on it somewhere. I can't remember exactly where, but I know that there was this one book that I was looking into, and it had all the types of sigils you needed to create your own familiar, and you lay them down in your circle, and then you literally create it through your own energy, and then boom, you have a familiar. Like, there's so many ways to have a familiar. Don't just put familiars in a box.
At the same time, I will say this. I have a black cat. And I also now have a toad. But just because you have a black cat or something like that, that does not automatically... Oh, hi, Bastet.
Look, Bastet is here. Hello, Bastet.
That does not necessarily make that your familiar. Yes, it can be your familiar, but it's not automatically, I have a black cat, so that's my familiar.
No, I think especially with corporal beings, there has to be a very strong bond there.
Yes.
You know, it's not automatic just by getting them. That bond has to develop and grow, and I think especially with corporal beings, that bond tends to be less strong, and any magic you're able to do with them is less potent until you get further into the relationship. I think it's very, especially if you choose a corporal being, it's very much relationship based. I know my cat would sometimes get pissed at me, and then none of my magic would work.
I have to just bow out for a second because my phone's about to die, so I have to get my charger.
Okay, no problem. We'll hold down the fort.
Yeah. Have you had any familiars besides the angel and the tree?
Yes. I actually had 2 dogs that were my familiar, and I raised them from pups. and funnily enough, they were both named JoJo.
Aww.
And one was a blue heeler Aussie mix with a little bit of German Shepherd. He was like the quietest dog, and he was like, we went everywhere together. He slept in my bed. Like, we were like, I called him my brother. Like, that's how deep I love this dog. When he died, it was like, it was so hard for me to get over it. It was years before I could even get another pet because that's how bad it was.
Yeah, I have one dog that I think is potentially familiar, but he hasn't decided whether he wants that or not. He's in the other room.
And then I had my other JoJo. We didn't work a lot of magic together, but he did help me heal. Like, he helped with, like, my own personal journey through healing. And in that way, I think he was my familiar because he helped me with my self journey. And
I think that's the other thing we don't talk about, that they can serve different purposes.
yes. So
I think, they can serve different purposes. This is my one puppy. He's gonna come up here. Come here, baby. Come here. Up, up. Up, up. Come on. Come on up. He's huge.
Aww.
Here. Honey, sit for a second so they can say hi to you. And get the angle right. This is my puppy.
Aww.
This is my Ein. And he's a Pitbull Ridgeback mix. So.
He's beautiful.
I know he is. And is he gonna stay? No, he's gonna stay in the room. Give me 1 second to close the door. Yeah, so this is. He's not a familiar yet, but it might become that way. He's very loving.
Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Yep,
okay,
we can see you.
Last time I disappeared.
I know. Last time we were having technical difficulties out the butt.
I know.
Here's a good one. Weed.
What you doing?
I have heard so many people be like, oh, if you're a witch, you're a hippie and you smoke pot. Be like, I don't smoke pot.
Some
You know
do,
what I mean?
some don't. Again.
It's all about a personal preference. Just because, and that's another thing. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, if you're a witch, you have to be a hippie. You have to be super liberal and blah, 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 blah. No. Don't put us in that box.
I do think a lot of us are. I think a lot of us tend towards that, but yeah, it's not a universal rule.
I believe that it's about everybody's personal journey. Myself, I tend to be very liberal. It's
Same
very
here. Hi, extreme liberal.
It's very funny because like I'm a bisexual pagan witch. And it's like,
I get the feeling you feel like you fit all the stereotypes.
I do. I do fit all the stereotypes. I smudge. I do incense. I did tarot before I became a witch. Like, I'm stereotypical as shit. But some of the stereotypes, I don't fit at all. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not promiscuous, which everybody thinks if you're a witch, you have to be promiscuous. No, you don't. I'm super, like... Yes, I've went and I've done stuff to, like, find myself, but, like, right now, like, within the last, like, 5 years, like, I respect myself. Not saying that promiscuous people don't respect themselves, but I respect myself and my self-worth, and, I don't just
And I think maybe what you're trying to say is that for you, your self-worth, for you...
is I don't need to give you my body to make you like me.
Yes, exactly. And as far as being a hippie and smoking a lot of weed and lighting a bunch of incense, I think for a lot of us that's true. I know for me it's true. I'm incense 24/7 going. I don't smoke weed, but I smoke herbs like this, things like that. I use flying oils, things like that. Things that are mind-altering, but that serve a purpose for me. And I'm not against weed or anything like that. I don't care what you do. But I do use mind-altering herbs, I guess, to dig deeper into my own energy and my own power and to kind of see things from a different perspective. So I do that.
And there's nothing
And
wrong
I
with
fit
that.
the last stereotype. Though I'm kind of interesting with this. Personally, I'm actually on the asexual spectrum, but I'm actually also poly, which a lot of people find really weird. But it can happen. I'm also extremely liberal, non-binary trans person. So yeah, I'm the fun other end of it. But yeah, so it's interesting.
But I mean, I think we've all come across the witch that's super conservative, but not in a mean way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they believe in, the woman should be, the mother. There should be the cook, should be the cleaner. And you know what? If that's your cup of tea, that's your cup of tea, hun. And there's nothing wrong with that. But don't put it on other people, is all I'm saying. Just like we're talking about stereotypes, don't put stereotypes on us all.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like, just because somebody wants to be, if you're a housewife or a stay-at-home mom or something like that, and you fit some kind of stereotype in that way, if that's what you want to do and that's of your own free will and that's something that you've chosen, then that is,
Go for it.
Yeah, and people say like, oh, you can't be a housewife and be a feminist. You can't be a stay-at-home mom and be a feminist. Yeah, you can. If it's your choice and that's what you're choosing to do, then that is the definition of feminism. You are in control of your choices and living your life the way that you want to live it.
And I think we're getting really close to hitting on another stereotype that all witches believe death to men and feminism to the point where, like, you become that extreme where you say men are evil. And no, we do believe in the power of femininity, but there's a huge difference between the power of female and saying that men are evil. I think there's this logic jump that people make, and we embrace the divine feminine. That does not mean we believe men are evil. I mean, I'm a non-binary, tend to present more masculine person, and so no, I'm not bad or evil or anything. I just who I am.
All right, it's time for me to play devil's advocate. What? All right, everybody, here it is. I myself do not hate men. What I hate is patriarchy.
Oh no, that I hate that too. Trust me.
I cannot stand our own society that we have put females so low beneath the male counterpart that, and I'm just gonna say it. I mean, it's not, and I'm gonna get shit for this, but I believe that a lot of people that say, oh, it's oh gosh, what is it called? Like, they're saying like it's the word has escaped me. Like, society. Like, if you're high in society and you're white, do you know what I'm talking about? Somebody help me out here.
Racism, sexism.
No. It's like a word. It's
discrimination.
Like white privilege.
White privilege. A lot of people say it's white privilege. I totally believe that most of our freaking problems is male privilege. I mean, we just saw it.
I think it's a combination. I run a lot of stuff on social justice. Yay, I probably took on
I'm not saying that there's not white privilege. I'm not saying that there's not white privilege, but I believe that a lot of the roots of our problem as a whole society, not just one little, like, not just one piece.
I think it comes from what my friends call a WASP, a white, the overall white heterosexual male, cis male. That's, if you fit that kind of grouping, Protestant, sorry, so Christian Protestant. Yeah. If you're a white heterosexual straight, male person, you are gonna have so much fun in life.
Yes, and everybody else gets the shitter.
Away from that is gonna be more problems in your life. So
we literally just saw, if you've been on social media or the news at all, with
Brock Turner.
Brock Turner, the rapist, got 6 months for raping an unconscious woman because it would have impacted his life too much. Yet we've got guys in prison
and then we have the people who are
for like drug charges.
Yeah, there was a video I was watching recently, a little bit after that I felt sick to my stomach.
Oh God, yeah.
He was talking about how apparently the only thing that we should qualify as rape is if you're at a knife point in an alley. No, that is not the only thing that qualifies as that.
No.
You know, if you're basically, consent only counts if the person is sober. And by the way, male, female, non-binary, whatever, you have to give consent. This is not just for one group. Consent only counts, as a rule, no exceptions to this. If the person is sober, so no alcohol, no drugs, no intoxicating substances. Apparently my dog's upset. No alcohol, drugs, intoxicating substances. You're okay, baby.
No, I completely
if the person
agree with
has
you.
no
You have to be conscious
pressure,
and understand.
no pressure, and no reason that you can control them. So if you have someone in a location where they can't leave, they are not capable of consent. If a person is not sober, they are not capable of consent. If a person is not in the right mind, is mentally incapable of it, not capable of consent. I don't know why this concept is so difficult for people.
And maturity. That's why we have an 18 over. You have to be mature enough to consent to sex, because otherwise you don't understand the ramifications. I will say that right now. I think that's a big...
Are you okay?
What?
Okay, honey?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
My eyes are watering.
I know this is like a hard topic
for people. And by the way, I'm gonna keep track of where we stop talking about this, or if you can do that, and then we can mark where it is that this is talked about, just because I think for some people this could be a really upsetting conversation. So
give a little trigger warning.
I want to go back, and mark like what time frame it's from, so people can see like, hey, from this time to this time, if you're not okay with this topic, just skip it.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So let's make sure when we're done the video, we check that right away.
But what I was trying to say about patriarchy is, like, a lot of people say that, you know, witches are all man haters. I don't hate men. Men are fine. But if you're, I'll give an example. If you're one of those people, like a certain Republican that I watched, saying that if we make abortion legal, we should make rape legal. Are you serious? You're an actual... You are in the political system and you can say that? Really?
You know, my
this is how fucking bad it is.
Anything that topic, he says, if you talk about, if you're a conservative Republican and the topic of rape comes up, the only thing you can say is rape is bad. And then get off that topic, because all of you make a fool of yourself every time this is brought up.
You don't just make a fool of yourself, you perpetuate the fucking problem. You are the problem.
I will say something, and I'm not going to get into it in this video because I really don't want to talk about it at all. But I've been assaulted on 3 different occasions to 3 different, I guess, extremes. And I never ever did a goddamn thing about it. The very first time it happened, it was the lowest, I guess, extreme. And I did try to report it at the time I was in high school. I did try to report it, and nothing ever came of it. So after that, I've never reported any of it. And I think that that comes back to victim blaming, where it's so hard for a woman or a man who's been raped to there's so much pressure on the victim to prove it, to defend themselves, to...
Or, like, if you smile the next day, suddenly you aren't a victim anymore. Or if you can... If some people can look the victim, the person who abused them in the eye, and that does not invalidate... And to anyone who's been through this, no matter how you express it, you are still valid.
And
I mean, I went through this too, back in last September, so, like, almost 2 years ago now. I was on campus, and a guy convinced me to go off campus, got me so I mentally was not able to give consent, also took me to a location where and by the way, I didn't have a cell phone or anything, so I had no way to contact anyone to tell them to come pick me up. I mean, I was trapped. And pressured me into some things that I was very not okay with, and it was a horrible experience. I mean, I tried to report it to the police, and as unfortunately is very common, I was basically talked out of doing anything, and by now there's very little I can do.
Right.
And unfortunately, in the society, that's really how it's treated a lot. So.
And I think people who say that we don't live in a rape culture they're one of the problems. They're one of the big problems that perpetuate rape, like blaming the victim and saying that if you're promiscuous, you're asking for it.
Or if you're dressed in a certain way,
yes.
walking through a neighborhood, automatically that means it's your fault.
I saw this. Are you ready for this? Okay. This woke me up, like, hardcore. And I read this thing, and it said, well, she got drunk. What did she think was going to happen? And the answer to that was, she thought she was going to get a hangover the next day, like a normal person.
I saw that same thing, and I shared it probably from you.
I was like, yes, that's what should happen. A hangover, not getting violated.
Yep.
Exactly, and a hangover sucks, and you take some medicine for it, and you move on with your day.
Like, this is...
The other thing is so psychologically damaging. I mean, I ended up with severe PTSD. I would have flashbacks, panic attacks. I mean, I couldn't function all the time. Actually, I can't even go back and visit my friends at that school. I dropped out of school because of it. I can't go back and visit my friends at the campus because every time I go back now I start panicking again, and I end up... I mean, it's taken a lot of work for me to get to the point I am today where I can even discuss this at all.
Yeah, I still don't talk about it in detail, mostly because even today, and not this last one that happened, or no, not the last, it was the second one that happened, but it was the most extreme. I still get flashbacks, and it's things that I suddenly remember somebody saying that is not conscious in my memory. All of a sudden, I'll just, you know what I mean? It just comes back, and that's how I know for sure that, because I again, as a woman, or anybody who's been violated, sometimes just because of the way that people react to you, you start to doubt yourself, like
doubt your memory, everything. It becomes like, did that really happen the way I thought it did? Am I just imagining this? Is it really my own fault? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can't say a lot on this because I am around my children, but I did make a lengthy video of my own experience with this problem. It's quite a lengthy video. It's like 30 minutes long. It's on my channel, Randomness Magic Vlog, and I do give links out to find help. But what I will say is that I also live with PTSD from it. I get triggered. I can't watch certain things because it will trigger me. I cannot watch a lot of things with that kind of violence in it. You see it a lot in horror films, you know what I mean? Like, you see,
I know, and it's so sad, because I love being scared. I love horror movies, but now most of them I can't watch.
Yeah, I can't watch those. Anything with, because in most of the shows that have a big draw on drugs and stuff, that's in a lot of it. So I can't watch, Sons of Anarchy, anything like that. I can't, because I do get triggered. And it's not that I hate... Here, I'll say it again, because we did go on a tangent here. It's not that we hate men.
No.
It's not.
No. I'm more masculine than feminine most of the time, so yeah.
It's not the fact that we're witches and we're man-haters. We hate predators. And evil motherfuckers, whether they're male or female...
Don't want to hold the predator accountable. Those are the people we can't stand.
The perpetuators. We hate those people. We don't hate men in general. We're not man-haters. Okay? And just because we believe in the maiden, the mother, and the crone doesn't mean we don't believe in the god.
Right.
No, most of us believe in the one god.
There's feminine and masculine balance in the universe and in a lot of our practices. And, I think the focus on the feminine aspect and why people are so focused on that and why it gets more I don't want to say
And not to mention that
publicity,
there are groups who specifically only focus on the feminine. Just most of us prefer to use a balance.
Right, and I think the reason that the feminine, well, why the idea is that we only work with the feminine, or why that is a bigger part of our practice, is because most of us come from some kind of Abrahamic religion, and we have had the idea of a single masculine God shoved down our throats so much, and it's so perpetuated
Abhorrent.
in society, you know what I mean? So we kind of feel the need to balance that out. Especially women, I think, feel that need because they've been so ingrained with this idea that deity is male and we have nothing to relate to. And then we find out that there is goddess energy, there is feminine energy, and that it's okay to work with that. And I think that's where a lot of the idea of, that we hate men or that we only work with the goddess or, things like that. I think that's where a lot of that comes from.
And that's another point. I would like to just bring this up real quick because it's really tied into this topic. For the longest time, I didn't work with deity. For the longest time, I worked with absolutely no deity at all. I worked with the elements and elementals. I didn't work with deity for so long in my practice. It took me so long to even step into the realm of deity. So not all of us believe in gods and goddesses. Some of us don't. So that's another thing.
Yep.
Like, I have the goddesses and gods now, but, I mean, it took me years to even step into the realm of deity. So...
Yeah. And I think that's another misconception, that if you're a witch, or you're not necessarily a magical practitioner, but if you identify as a witch, you have to have a patron and a matron. You have to work with deity. And that's not necessarily so. If you are a Wiccan by religion or something like that, then if that's your tradition, that's your tradition. But if you are more of a just solitary witch in that you just work with energy manipulation, things like that, you don't have to have deity. There are such things as atheist witches and agnostic witches, and they can manipulate energy and perform magic just fine without deity.
I agree. I think I'm a good example of this. For me, I follow an overarching masculine and feminine deities. Just overarching god and goddess. But under that, my main patron, the main one I follow, I don't actually have a feminine deity. I have Loki. And that's pretty much it for me. Not to say I don't have interest in other gods and goddesses, it's just Loki happens to be the one I followed the most. And that doesn't mean that I don't respect the feminine. I mean, obviously, I respect the goddess extremely. It tends to be when I'm at a moment where I don't think Loki would help me with something, given his personality and the way he responds to things. I tend to purely pray to the goddess, not a specific deity. And that's just how I follow my practice. So...
Can we bring up the fact that, okay, here's the deal. The witch, populace or whatever, the group, some of them really, really stereotype against eclectic witches because they think our belief system is invalid because we don't have a set belief system, and that's bullshit. That's bullshit.
Because I identify as eclectic. I hate the fucking word because of what everybody thinks that it means. And it's kind of twofold. First of all, people think, well, you don't really have a belief system. You just pull from different traditions willy-nilly, disrespectfully. You kind of just do whatever you want and this and that. And it's twofold for me. First of all, yes, I pull from all different sources. But I try to do so as respectfully as possible. I try to educate myself on where these ideas and practices come from and get a basic understanding of the culture that they're associated with. That being said, I do whatever I want. Basically, the way that I work is that if I get results from something, then that's what I'm going to use. If there's experimentation. If I get results from a hoodoo candle spell, then that's what I'm going to use. If I get results from working with Hindu deities, Ganesha, I work with them a lot. Kali, if I get results from that, then that's what I'm going to use. And it's not in a disrespectful way, and it is technically considered eclectic, but it's basically my whole theory on magic is if it works, do it. I don't limit myself to one practice or one way of manifesting results, and that's what I consider eclectic. But I see where other people kind of look at that like a cop out almost, like
for me, I kind of take that in a different way, because I do the same kind of thing. I'm very eclectic, but I think the reason I only have one patron, Loki, is because I prefer when I take on, like, when I want to follow a god or a goddess, that I envelop them completely. I learn everything about them, which obviously takes a lot of study and is not something you can do overnight.
Right.
So until I feel like I can completely understand as much as a human can, Loki, I'm not interested in following your gods. And again, to each their own. But for me, that's part of the reason I don't. Because I want to understand the culture as much as possible, envelop everything I can, understand everything I can before I would be willing to look at another culture or anything else. Mostly because I'm very conscious of not wanting to feel like I follow that trend where I just take everything from different places. And I have no problem with people who do that. But for me, the way I feel like I can do the best to respect each culture is to not take more gods than just one. And there are different pieces of practices I pull, but especially with the deities, personally, I try not to pull anything until I really truly understand them 100%.
Right. And I don't do that. Like, it's not like, oh, I need a love spell.
I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying I know there are eclectic people who do.
I'm not saying, that's not what I'm saying. I don't do that. Just kind of like pick and choose a deity. Most of the time in my workings, there's not even deity involved. It's different methods of practices. Different, I don't know how to explain it. Basically different, somebody help me out here.
Beings, entities, core beliefs.
Yeah, and in my practice, that kind of changes from time to time, and a lot of it has nothing to do with deity, and I don't even involve deity in a lot of it. A lot of it is just straight energy manipulation, without that necessarily help of a deity. A lot of it is animal spirits or my ancestors, things like that. So.
I want to talk on this just a bit. I have had some people, like, you hear those people, and I have no problem with traditionals, like traditionalists. I have no problem whatsoever with Alexandrians, Gardnerians, whatever you want to do. That's you. But I do have a problem when they invalidate an eclectic witch just because they don't have a set rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe, like, I get it. You want somebody to have a valid tradition. Well, guess what? Eclectic witches are valid in their own traditions. Just because it's not set to your own guidelines doesn't mean it's wrong. That's why we have such problems with Christianity, because we don't believe in that guideline. So just because you are a traditionalist and you don't believe that eclectic witches are actually witches because they're not in your guideline, what does that sound like, my friends? The problem that we have with Christianity? Sure does to me.
Yeah.
And also the fact, I'm going to say this real quick because we're talking about deity. I was personally, like, I know you say, like, don't get offended, it's just what other people say, but sometimes we get offended, okay? And I personally got offended when I was listening to, and I actually like this channel. I was watching this channel, and I was watching the witches there talk about things, and they kind of do what we do, but there's, like, okay, I won't name any names, but anyway, they were talking about how only newbies or fluffy bunnies have Hecate as their goddess, because that's the one that everybody that's new is comes into, because they think because she's the goddess of witches, that's the one they have to, you know, that's the one they have to worship. Okay, let me tell you a small story to give you perspective on this. Ignorant. Sorry, I don't mean to call people out, but that just happens sometimes. When I was finally stepping into the realm of deity, I did hella amounts of research on different pantheons, different gods in that pantheons, different goddesses in that pantheon. And I went into my ritual of, I was getting ready. Here's what had happened. I was like, man, I love Demeter and I love Apollo. Man, those are my two. I'm totally gonna go and, like, devote myself to Demeter and Apollo, because hey, they're awesome. I go into my ritual. Hecate shows up out of the blue saying, no, that's not what's going to happen. I'm sorry. I know that you had, like, your own opinions of how this was going to go down, but you're mine, and we got some work to do. And then a whole bunch of shit that was so powerful of, like, transformation after transformation after transformation happened in my life, because not only did Hecate show up, shortly after, Loki just waltzes in and is like, let's start the party. So the funny thing was, I was like, in the beginning, a lot of us start like this, where we don't want to dabble into what some people call the shadow realms of witchcraft. And I was like, I'll play it safe. I'll go with Demeter and Apollo. Totally safe. No. Hecate and Loki just waltz into my ritual and like, you ready to go, bitch? And I'm like, oh my god, what do I do?
That's pretty much what Loki did to me. He just was like, hey, no, you're coming with me. We're gonna work on some stuff. Hecate hasn't shown up for me yet, but Loki so far has been the only one to bother showing up for me. But he's been very there. And just so people who do follow Loki around there, they've heard a lot about people always marrying Loki. I didn't. Loki doesn't want me romantically. He just wants me as a friend.
Mm-mm.
Not everyone does. And some people do, and that's extremely valid. But not all of us are cold that way, and he just wants me as a friend.
And you know what? It's so funny, because I always say this, because stuff always happens around my house, because I'm a medium, I'm a witch, and things gravitate towards you when you do energy work, because we put off more energy that way, like that. So, it's funny when, like, things fall or doors slam, and then my boyfriend is like, what the fuck did you bring into this house? And I'm like, honey, I'm a devotee of a trickster god. Shit's gonna go down on the daily. On the daily, my friend. So just get used to it and enjoy the ride.
Yeah. For me, I think Loki really gave me more ability to notice. I wouldn't say the future exactly, because I don't have exactly premonition, but it's more like things just, I can tell when they're going to work out, and I think that's the trickster nature, is that I can see a situation that looks like hell, and then it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's going to be fine. That'll be fine in a few weeks. And everyone around me is like, no, that's going to fall apart. I mean, it's going to be awful. Everything's going to go wrong. You're going to end up homeless. You know, whatever. It works out.
Well, see, what people don't understand, they're scared of Loki when they don't understand if you come to him with respect, he is one of the most powerful manifesting gods. He manifests
there are so many people who've actually seen him. I mean, usually you don't get that with gods. They do not like to manifest, but Loki is an exception.
No. When I say
I've read so many forums that be like, yeah, Loki just shows up for coffee every other week.
No, when I say manifest, I mean like he brings things into your life. He brings things to like creation and to fruition. Like he changes things. Like he's a transforming God. Like he brings so many transformations and manifestations into your life and into your practice that you really
That's because
have to.
that's what he is. There's
Exactly.
chaos and stasis. He represents chaos. He doesn't like stasis. So for anyone out there, if you invite Loki into your life, be prepared for your life to not be stasis and not be standing and end up changing a lot, and for the better usually. Although some things may feel like for the worse, but
and that's just
change.
Just another stereotype. If you work with a dark god or a dark goddess, that doesn't mean you're a maledictive practitioner. I don't do malediction. Like, I don't do that. You know what I mean? I do protection. I don't do malediction. But I have two dark deities as my matron and patron. So other people that I'm like I'll walk up to somebody, right? And they'll be like, my matron is Aphrodite, and my
Who, by the way,
my
if anyone actually knows the old myths, she was not a nice person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll think that Aphrodite is all light, and they'll say, oh, my patron is the green man. And you have to understand there's balance in every god and goddess. Just some are
Aphrodite, who was it?
Dark gods
the spiders? She cursed.
And it's like, no, what you don't understand is just because I have a labeled dark god or goddess, that doesn't make me a maledictive practitioner.
Right.
Nothing wrong with maledictive practitioners at all. But just because you follow a certain god or follow a certain goddess, that doesn't put you in that type of box. Hecate to me is...
like you brought up Aphrodite. I knew someone who followed Aphrodite who was very maledictive, and I think it really depends on the person where you take their magic.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, the myth of Aphrodite, she's not all sunshine and rainbows. She is maledictive herself. But beyond that,
you think you're prettier than me? Have fun looking like a spider now.
Exactly. But it's the same thing, like people work with Gaia, and it's like, oh, it's the Earth Mother, it's fertility, it's, yeah, Gaia also causes tsunamis and earthquakes and tornadoes and floods and all kinds of things like that. So she's not all fluffy, shit and rainbows either. Excuse me. Like, you just have to, everything has a balance, and there's nothing that's, okay, so like I said, I mainly work with Isis. I don't consider matron a patron. I work with Isis. To me, she's like the all-mother, the all-encompassing, good, bad, life, death. She's just like my big mother that watches over everything while I'm doing everything else. But I started working with Santa Muerte, and she's been calling to me for a while, and I've been ignoring her because all I hear about her is, oh, she protects gangs and criminals and this, that, and the other, and I was like, what? I don't need to be involved in that. And I'm not of Mexican heritage. I don't, whatever. But finally I was like, screw it. I bought the book. I bought her one of her candles. I set her up a little altar space, and one of the things that I started doing was reading about death, and not necessarily witchy books or whatever, but psychological books based on death and dying, and getting to know the psychology behind that, and realizing that, yes, this particular manifestation of death is of Mexican descent or culture, but the idea of death affects everybody, all of us, you know what I mean? So, and even my husband said, like, oh, you seem different, like you seem more, I've been cleaning my house, like OCD, like just changing all these things, and he's like, what's different, what have you been doing? And I'm like, nothing, I'm working with Santa Muerte, and for some reason this is what I'm doing, because even there's a balance there. Yes, she is the matron of death and the neutral, I don't know, of death, meaning that it affects everybody without discrimination, and that's why she's come to known as the matron of criminals and things like that, because she doesn't discriminate, because she's death, and death does not discriminate.
And I think we also need to remember that the old saying that death is in love with life, and life is in love with death. That's
exactly
nature.
And that's the balance. Is like I'm starting to like I'm reading about death and I'm doing this, but at the same time I'm starting to appreciate life and trying to better my life and better my surroundings and things like that. So it's just there's duality to everything is my point. That's my little tangent, but there is duality to everything, and there is no deity or entity that is 100% fluffy or 100% evil.
Agreed.
I agree.
And I think maybe this is a good place to wrap this up, possibly, given we've actually been doing this for almost 2 hours now.
Yeah, long, but it was fun.
It has been. I'm excited for next time when we do this, which I assume next time we'll go back to the topic we talked about last time.
I think so.
Which was supposed to be, so I believe if we do the next time, the schedule one, the topic was going to be spells we've done, how they've not turned out the way we wanted them to turn out, whether for negative or positive directions. And then we said it was going to be based on how other things had affected it, possibly, also considering that, like, our elements and stuff.
Elements and stuff, yes.
Yeah, how that had affected our spell. Even, like, mental stuff, probably. Different ways that we think our spell was affected by what was around us.
That's a good topic. I can't wait. So
and
I
know
be able to talk to you guys this time.
I know I kind of bowed out. Shit went down. But it's pretty much calmed down. So hopefully I'll be able to join in on the regular. I hope so, because I love it. So hopefully I'll be there on Monday.
Yeah. We lost a couple of our hosts because, I mean, shit goes down for everybody, and we're not going to judge anybody because everybody has to take care of themselves before they deal with anybody else. Yeah. And that's how it's got to go. So hopefully we'll be able to continue with the Wild Witchcraft channel. We love doing it. I love talking with you guys every week.
I'm enjoying this.
It's the highlight of my week.
It is quickly becoming my highlight too. I'm like, I can't wait for the next one.
I want us to start doing collabs with each other's channels. I think that would be so much fun. I do. So I invite you guys and all of our hosts to do collabs on my channel, just so you know.
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, let's shut it down. Anybody want to shout out to their channel?
I don't have one yet, so I've done most of my stuff through blogs and stuff. I will say, though, just a reminder, we probably want to go back through and find the section that had some content warning that we want to put on for the...
I will go ahead and I will try to do that because I'm going to be posting this and I'm able to go
I just don't want to forget to do that because I know some people that's going to be a reason that might be very upsetting to watch the video. And I want everyone to be able to watch it, so by marking which sections are going to be a problem.
I will put in the description that there's a trigger warning.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys. For everybody watching, I hope you enjoyed. I know it was a long ride, but we enjoyed it, and we hope you did too. So meet us again here, hopefully at Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if not, we'll give you a little shout out on our channel to when the next one will be. So, bye guys.